Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast with Michelle Chalfant, a place to delve into who we are, how we got that way, and explore what it takes to be a healthy grown-up. With an extensive toolbox and guests with varied expertise, Michelle will lead us on a journey to learn what it's like to live authentically and to love ourselves just the way we are. And now, here's Michelle.
Hello, everybody. It is Michelle Chalfant, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today on April 11th, which is crazy. I say this all the time, but where is 2019 going? It is flying by. Cannot believe we're in April, in spring already. Today, I'm really excited because so many people write into me about wanting to learn more about food in the adult chair and what about binge eating or anything to do with food. And I have someone on the show today, Jessi Jean. You might follow her on Instagram. She's got a big following there. She is talking with us today about binge eating. And that is something even I have done for a lot of my life. And it was a great conversation that we had. So I think you're going to really enjoy this show. We talked all things food, binge eating, mindful eating. She shared her story with us about how she became a coach. So I think you're going to really get a lot out of today's show. Being that it's April 11th, guess what? The Adult Chair Weekend Intensive is within a month away. It's kind of crazy. May 4th and 5th, I will be here in Nashville, Tennessee, doing the Adult Chair Weekend Intensive, which I, again, have edited and rewritten quite a bit even since the last one. A lot more experiential work we're going to be doing in these chairs. And again, I always try to make it better and better and better and better. And I think this is going to be the best one yet. So come join us. To get more information on this, go to theadultchair.com/workshop. But I would say hurry up on that one because we are almost at full capacity. I'm taking 50 people. We are almost there. So if you're thinking about joining us, jump on it. theadultchair.com/workshop. Let's see. What's the other thing? Oh, the other thing I want to share with you, the Adult Chair membership group. We're having a lot of fun over there. Come check that out at theadultchair.com/membership. In this membership site, we're going into a deep dive every month with a new monthly theme. And guess what? This month is all about the adult chair. So if you want to learn more about the adult chair, come join us there, theadultchair.com/membership. You can check it out and see what the membership site's all about. We'd love to have you. All right. Before we get to Jessi Jean, I have to say thank you to our sponsor for today, Green Chef. Green Chef is a USDA certified organic company that makes eating well, easy, and affordable with plans to fit every kind of lifestyle. They have paleo, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, Mediterranean, heart smart, lean and clean, keto, gluten-free, and omnivore. So many different meal plans to choose from. So here's what's nice. You can switch up your meal plan whenever you're ready to try a new way to eat, which is exactly what I've just done. I just switched over to keto because I am combining that with my intermittent fasting and wanting to lose a few pounds before the summer hits. And I'm loving these new meal plans that I'm getting. This week, I just made a walnut crusted barramundi, which is basically sea bass. It was excellent and so easy to make. That's what I love, is that these recipes are quick and easy with step-by-step instructions, chef tips, and photos to guide you right along. Everything comes fresh. So with Green Chef, you can enjoy clean ingredients that you can trust, seasonally sourced for peak freshness. It's time to let Green Chef do meal planning, grocery shopping, and most of the prep for you week after week. And let me tell you, it really does free up so much time. Every week I used to think, what should I make this week for dinner? And I love having meals to choose from online. I look at the picture, I look at the ingredients, click on it, boom, it's in my box, and here it comes that next week. Love it. So here's what's really cool. If you want to try them out, they're offering all of my listeners $50 off your first box. It's fabulous. You cannot go wrong. $50 off. Just go to greenchef.us binge.com/adult to get that $50 off. Okay? $50 off. How can you not do this? Go get your first box of Green Chef at greenchef.us/adult. All right, let me get to Jessi Jean. Jessi is a certified eating psychology coach and specializes in mind-body eating coaching. She founded the Food Freedom Masterclass and partnered with licensed professional counselor Cody Baker. And together they coach women who are afraid of spiraling out of control in their journey to intuitive eating and body confidence. On a side note, I just want to say we did talk about this, and she does include men in this. So don't feel like if you're a man, you cannot listen. You will get a ton out of this show. It was a great show. We talked all about binge eating. And here we go with Jessi Jean. Welcome, Jessi, to the Adult Chair podcast. We are thrilled to have you on today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle.
I'm so excited to talk to you because I've never spoken to an eating psychology coach. I love that title.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It's something that I'm very, I didn't grow up dreaming of going into this field, but it's something that I knew was my moral obligation to go into after I went through a 10-year battle with my own struggles with eating disorders and body image issues. So here we are.
Oh my gosh. Well, I actually wanted to start there. Would you mind? Because I'd love to hear, how did you get here? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I struggled starting my freshman year in high school. I really started to struggle with body image issues, and my relationship with food just started to get weird. And I had no idea really what was going on. And it really just started to develop and progress over time and get worse and worse. And a lot of individuals, their struggles with food typically start out of a, dislike for their own body. And so they feel a need to control their food intake, and that spirals out of control. But for me, what ended up happening was I was just a perfectionist by nature. And the moment I got into high school, I remember my parents telling me that if I ever wanted to go on and become more than they were, and I grew up in a very, very modest, a very poor, I had a great childhood, but if I ever wanted to go on and become more, that I had to get scholarships. And so starting in my freshman year of high school, I really only slept 4 to 5 hours a night. I was obsessed with doing everything I could to be the best in anything I was doing: academics, sports, volunteer, leadership. I was in it all, and I felt like I had to be the best. And so sleep was the first thing to go. And as that went, I was becoming more and more exhausted and worn down. And so I needed food to fuel myself. And that's where I turned. And then it became this thing that I was dependent on in order to get through my days. My little petite frame started to change. I started to notice my body image. And then for the next 10 years of my life, I struggled with my weight and with my body image and with binge, emotional, compulsive overeating. And so that's kind of the struggle. And the struggle is really what built the foundation for what I do now, which is eating psychology coaching. So I went to the Institute for the Psychology of Eating to become credentialed to work with women in this way who struggle with binge, emotional, compulsive overeating. And really the reason that I decided to go down this path was because I went to therapy for years for my struggles with food. I went to Overeaters Anonymous, and I really didn't find the help that I really needed. I wasn't making much progress. And that was really discouraging for somebody who's willing at the age of, 13, 14, a freshman in high school, to sleep 4 to 5 hours a night, to be perfect in everything. The fact that I wasn't getting the help and I was trying with everything I knew how, that brought me to this place of questioning if life was even worth it in some of my darkest days. And so out of that, when I finally understood kind of the neuroscience, what happens in the brain when we struggle with compulsive tendencies with food, and when I was able to really overcome this in a matter of a few months, when I had spent years dealing with it, when I found out this information, I knew I then had a moral obligation to get this information into the hands of women worldwide, men and women worldwide. And so that's kind of what led me to this point and doing what I now do.
Wow. What a story. So it started when you said 13 or 14?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So young.
Mm-hmm.
So what does happen? You mentioned Wait, before I even say this, you mentioned working with women, but what you do can also apply to men as well, correct?
Absolutely. And for the men out there that hear this message, it is, women by nature are more comfortable speaking about their struggles. We tend to be more open. And so there are men out there who struggle with this, and a lot more than you would even believe, you would even think. And so for those men out there who feel alone and isolated because this isn't talked about, this is absolutely 100% applicable to men.
Perfect. That is what I was guessing, but I just wanted to make sure. So you mentioned something that happens in the brain. I'm interested in that. So what exactly does happen?
Yeah. So when we struggle with compulsive tendencies with food, the brain activity resembles very similar brain activity as somebody who struggles with substance abuse issues, whether that's alcohol or drugs. It looks very similar. However, the protocol for healing addiction is abstinence. And the reason abstinence is effective in healing addiction is because the neural pathway, which I like to just simplify and call it these habit circuits or these habit pathways that are created in the brain, when you starve the brain of the substance that's kind of lighting up the brain's reward center, the neural pathway that's sending these impulses and reinforcing these cravings weakens until it's completely gone altogether. So that's why abstinence works to heal addiction, although it's hard and there's this period of withdrawal because this neural pathway, this habit pathway is firing these impulses and causing us to crave these things that we're addicted to. It's really hard, but it's effective if you can get through that period of withdrawal. However, the medical community has looked at this and said, okay, well, this, what's going on a brain-based level when somebody struggles with binge, emotional, compulsive overeating, it looks very similar to that of a substance abuser, but we can't abstain from food. And so what do we do? And it's my belief that that's the reason why eating disorder recovery programs have such low success rates, is because the medical community hasn't really known what to do. And so we have to kind of take a backdoor approach to healing this impulsive craving without obviously becoming abstinent. And there's different approaches. When I was in OA, the idea was to eliminate sugar and to eliminate flour, wheat, some different things. And the reality is, it is my very strong belief that when you tell somebody they can't have something, what do they want?
They want it more.
They want it so much more. And so we have to take a different approach with food than we do with addiction, although what's going on a brain-based level is very similar.
So what is your approach? Like, how is it different?
So what's happening is not only, and this is why I feel like a lot of traditional eating disorder recovery approaches aren't very successful for most people, is it has to be kind of this combination approach. We have to approach it not just from an emotional standpoint, which traditional therapy does a really good job of addressing kind of the emotional needs. But then when it comes to the physical standpoint, we have to look at how do we weaken that impulse to binge, but without abstinence. We have to look at the emotional, we have to look at the physical, we have to look at the mental. And so what we do in the way that I help women is we look at all three of these aspects. And so when it comes to the physical approach, we use different mental collaboration, metacognition techniques to kind of retrain the brain. So there's different areas of the brain, and our prefrontal cortex, which is kind of known as our brain's executive functioning center, the area of our brain responsible for reason and rational thought and acting in alignment with our goals. And then there's these other areas of our brain, the more primal areas that are sending these impulses. And so a lot of times my clients will come to me and they're like, oh, like I don't want to binge, but I kind of like binging. And they have this fear that because they physically like it, maybe they're never going to get through it. And I explain, just like a drug addict knows intellectually, hey, this is not good for me, they physically have a dependency on it. Same with food. And so you can feel that mental tug of war, the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for reason, saying, why are you doing this? You feel terrible after, like, come on. And then this impulsive part of the brain that is driving this craving. And so we use different techniques to kind of retrain the brain and put the prefrontal cortex back in control in a greater sense. So strengthening the internal locus of control where you feel a deep sense of control. There's some people who are very impulsive. Those people typically have a lower internal locus of control. They don't feel very in control. There's people who it seems like nothing ruffles their feathers. Well, those people have a stronger internal locus of control. And we can actually train the prefrontal cortex to become stronger. And we do that through certain mental techniques. And so that's kind of how we approach the physical dependency in the program is we retrain this area of the brain, giving our women a greater sense of control over food so they feel less inclined to be impulsive. And the less impulsive they are with food over time, that impulse to engage in this behavior begins to weaken. And so it's a completely unconventional approach that we take, but it's been highly, highly effective. We've had women come in who have struggled for 10 to 15 years every single day with their relationship with food, binging and purging, and have been able to stop those behaviors completely in a matter of 8 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Can you give us one example of a technique that you might use?
Absolutely. So there's about 10 different techniques that we teach our clients, and some are used for different purposes. So there's techniques that we'll use that we teach our clients to use in the heat of the moment when they're feeling the impulse to binge, because the reality is you likely aren't going to think your way out of a binge when you're already feeling the impulse to binge eat or emotionally eat or be compulsive with food. You're not going to sit there and logically think your way out of it, because while you're having logical thoughts, simultaneously you're feeling this primal area of your brain. It's like, I like to call it like, it's like a child throwing a tantrum, like feed me, feed me. And reasoning with a child throwing a tantrum isn't likely going to be effective. And so a breathing technique that we use, this isn't really a mental technique. This is kind of just in the heat of the moment, what we can do to kind of circumvent the binging. It's a breathing technique. And so it is way more powerful to change your body's physical state than when you're in the heat of a moment than it is to try and think your way out of something. So when you change your physical state, it affects your mental. And you can see this pretty easily for those of you who might work out. When you go for a hard run, you maybe do sprints or you're a hard workout, you feel clearer, like you're able to think more clearly. That's because certain hormones are released in the body. And you got endorphins releasing, all these hormones are releasing. And so it changes the way we think. And so a very similar effect can happen when you change oxygen levels in the brain, which that happens when you're exercising, but you can also accomplish that same thing through breathing techniques. And so a technique that we teach our women is when you're feeling that impulse to binge and you're feeling like, I don't want to do this when I'm about to do this, you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth forcefully. So you take a deep breath in and then blow it out through your mouth forcefully. And you do that for about 30 seconds, in through your nose, out through your mouth. So it's just like that. And you do it for about 30 seconds and you will start to feel a little dizzy, a little lightheaded, because it's simulating a very similar experience as if you were to go and run a sprint, heavy breathing. But what that does is it increases oxygen in the brain, which changes how you think and how you function. And so you do that for 30 seconds and then give it another 60 seconds where you just breathe normally, kind of catch your breath, and then repeat that for 30 seconds and do that for maybe 3 to 5 rounds. And you will physically feel different, which will impact the way you're thinking and really give you a greater sense of, okay, do I really want to do this? And so that's one very simple, very basic technique out of about 10 to 12 that we teach our women.
I love that. I love that idea. The breath is so powerful. It does so many amazing things to the brain. I love it.
Absolutely.
So how would someone even know? Someone might be listening to the show wondering like, gosh, how do I know if I'm a binge eater or an emotional eater or a compulsive eater? Are they all the same thing or are they 3 different things?
This is a question I get asked all the time. And I'm glad you brought this up because I struggled with this for so long. Like, what is going on in my relationship with food? Like, what am I dealing with here? And what's so important to understand is, well, one, I am not a fan of labels, negative labels in any sense of the word. And the reason that I don't ever like to label somebody a binge eater or an emotional eater or an alcoholic, even if they display all of the behaviors and characteristics, is because when you look at the laws of behavior change, our identity is the biggest influence on our behavior. Who we believe we are at our core has the biggest impact on our behaviors. And so if you slap the label on your identity, binge eater, well, what are you likely going to manifest more of? You're likely going to act out what it means to be a binge eater more so. And so when somebody asks me, well, I don't really know if I'm a binge eater. I don't know if I'm an emotional eater. I just kind of feel crazy around food. I say, forget even trying to figure out a label for yourself, because really it's useless. Like there's no value in being able to say, yes, I'm a binge eater. It really does nothing. Instead, you can ask yourself questions like this. Do I ever feel guilt for eating? Do I ever feel anxious around food? Do I ever feel a sense of a loss of control or impulsive around food? Do I ever judge myself for what I eat? Do I use food to cope, distract, or numb out? Do I fear eating certain foods? Do I label food as good and bad? Do I feel like I'm on a roller coaster when it comes to my eating? Like some days I'm fine. Other days I'm elbow deep in a tub of, ice cream and I can't figure out how to get out. Do I feel like there's no way I could trust my intuition and my body to guide my eating? And do I feel like I sometimes can't even distinguish my body's hunger, fullness, and satiety cues? And if you can answer yes to any of those questions, there is something off in your relationship with food. It's not how you were intended to live. And it requires your attention, because unfortunately, it's not just going to go away. It requires some focused attention to retrain yourself in how you were actually born, which is a completely normal and natural intuitive eater who is able to easily and effortlessly listen to their intuition. That's how we were designed.
So true. So true. But yeah, things get, especially with women, I'm going to guess. And I don't know if it's as much with men, but it's just so much pressure, especially with social media now. We're always comparing ourselves to what other people look like. And then we need to lose weight. We need to restrict food. And then we get stressed. So then we overeat. It's like, it's crazy how much we even talk about food. What about anorexia? Does your model also apply to anorexia?
So I don't specifically work with women who are dealing with anorexia. So my real focus is on working with women who are struggling with binge, emotional, compulsive overeating. However, all of them run together pretty much in one way or another. A lot of people who deal with anorexia can't do it long term, right? The body just sends us these intense cravings, which result then in binging. But I specifically don't work with women who solely are struggling with anorexia.
Okay. And what would you say that real recovery looks like, or what is it? How do you know? How do you know what that looks like, I should say?
Yeah. So a lot of women have this idea, and it breaks my heart because I was in the same place too. And it's a very sad reality. And a lot of the women come to me and they believe that finding freedom and not dealing with these issues anymore is a matter of finding the right program, the right meal plan, the right thing to follow, and getting really good at developing discipline with food and willpower with food. And the reality is, if you're struggling with this, you don't have a discipline issue. You don't have a willpower issue. You're likely not a weak person. The reality is you're dealing with this brain-based problem. You're getting sent these impulses, these cravings, and that's very hard. The only difference between you, if you're struggling, and somebody who seems to just have it easy with food. Like I remember growing up, my dad would be like, "Oh, I have a headache." And I'm like, "Why, Dad?" He's like, "It's 3:00. I forgot to eat." And I remember looking at him like, you have like he had a third eye. Like, what? And the only difference between people like that who really have no struggle with impulsivity around food and those who struggle is that we have this impulse that's firing in our brain that's causing us to act this way. Because my dad doesn't feel the impulse to binge, he doesn't binge. Because I did, that's what drove me to binge. So you're not weak if you're dealing with the impulse. It's just real recovery is getting better at being disciplined or finding the right meal plan. Real recovery is when you no longer even feel the impulse to binge. Thus, you have no desire to binge. So many women are so afraid because they kind of like binging, which I tell them, you should like binging. If you're binging, you are physically addicted to what I call the binge eating high, the temporary euphoria, the numbing, the release that it gives your brain. And so you should like it if you're struggling with these things. That's normal. And so they're afraid because they're like, but I kind of like it. It's like, it's all I know. It's this escape for me. And real recovery is when you no longer even feel this impulse. Thus, you don't have a desire to binge whatsoever. And so it's this very natural, very normal relationship with food. You don't have to count, weigh, measure, track anything. It's, what am I craving? Oh, I think I'm going to have some of that. Oh, I'm full now. I'm going to leave some of this on my plate because I've naturally lost interest in food. That's how we were born. You look at a child, you can put a piece of cake or the most decadent sweet thing in front of a young child, and they won't binge on it. They'll eat it until the point where they're satisfied and naturally lose interest in it. And that's how we're designed. And we just have to get back to that place. And that really is what real recovery is all about.
That's so true. When you think about a child, they'll eat until they're full, and then they want to get down from the table and run away. It's so true. It's so true. And you're saying that in your program, you see success within 8 weeks. Is that what you said?
Yeah. And it's insane. And I know it's even hard to believe because I remember where I was at when I was struggling with this. I felt like I was standing at the bottom of Mount Everest, kind of looking up like, how am I ever going to climb this? And the reality is, and because we're not becoming anything new, we're getting back to how the body is designed. And so it's really just peeling off all of these layers that, like all of these things that are causing us to behave in weird ways with food. So it's just getting back to the root of who we are. And it can happen in 8 to 12 weeks. And we've had women come in who have struggled for years. And in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks, they are literally stopping this behavior. And the rate at which a woman goes, the rate at which her progress goes is dependent on her willingness to what I call release. The analogy I use is our internal environment it's like a soda bottle, if you were to think of it this way. And when you struggle with these behaviors with food, it's as if you have this pressurized carbonated soda bottle as your internal environment. The lid is screwed on tight and it's just constantly being shaken up, and it's getting more and more and more and more pressurized until you snap and you binge. And then it's like temporary relief, and then the fear of weight gain and spiraling out of control sets in. And so you put that bottle top back on and you screw it on tight, and then the pressure starts to build again. And the women who come into my program, I take them through this process of what I call untwisting the bottle top and letting this pressure out and keeping that bottle top off. And the women, you can do it slow, where it's like slowly letting out that carbonation. Or if you want to, you can unscrew that thing and let it blow. And it's going to look messy, and binge and overeating are a part of binge eating recovery. And you might do that for a little bit, but that kind of that pressure all comes out. And the rate at which you want to let that pressure out is the rate at which you will recover. And recovery can be, and typically is, a little messy. Like your relationship with food doesn't look perfect. But when you get on the other side of it, you are met with the most balance, the most bliss, the most peace with food you have ever experienced. And so, yeah, it can happen far faster than most women even believe.
Wow, that's incredible. I love it. So how would someone begin the process of healing their relationship with food?
Yeah. So really the process starts with developing awareness as to what is building this internal pressure. Because if we don't know what's causing this pressure to build, it just continues to happen. These cycles perpetuate themselves. And so when a woman gets started, we take her through this process of almost like getting a flashlight and pointing it inward and doing a bunch of deep introspective work. It's like, okay, what are the things that are causing this internal pressure to build? Is that things like self-judgment and fear of weight gain and poor body image? And is there a lot of stress? Like, what are all of these things that are causing internal pressure? And what I always tell women too is, I was made to believe in my years of therapy that in order to find freedom with food, I had to heal this ever lengthening list of triggers, what my therapist was telling me, and these triggers, things that must be driving my behavior. And I obsessively would go and try and tackle the countless hours of homework and introspective work that she was having me do in regards to these triggers. Like, how can I manage these things in my life that are causing me to binge eat, the stress, the overwhelm, the, things from my childhood? Like, how can I heal all of these things or manage these things better so that I don't binge? But the reality is, we don't have to heal this ever lengthening list of triggers or past traumas or really anything else in order to find food freedom. Of course, it's important to do that deep work, but it doesn't have to come before you can have balance with food. And so when I talk about developing awareness as to what's going on internally and what's building pressure, I'm talking about thought cycles and habit patterns, like what's happening in the brain. And we don't even recognize it because the majority of our day we're functioning on autopilot with our subconscious is just kind of in the driver's seat. We don't even realize it. And so we start to get really aware of what our mind is doing on a day-to-day basis so that we can learn to work in sync with it instead of be at war with it. And so that's really the first part of the process, is doing this introspective work and identifying I call them dominoes, like what dominoes are stacked up against you that are building this internal pressure. Well, let's first shine a light on them, and then let's learn the different mental collaboration, metacognition techniques and tools to start knocking them down one by one by one.
I love that. What I'm hearing you say is we've got to move into our adult chair, which is that higher version of ourselves, getting that prefrontal cortex to come online and become aware of what we are doing. I remember one time, I've used this example in the past, right? Something had happened at my son's school and I walked in the house, and we're very much living in what I call the adolescent chair, is very much from this egoic, unconscious place. And I had walked in the house and I walked straight in the pantry and started binging out on potato chips. And I didn't even know it. And then I sat there and I said, hold on, and I actually said, what chair am I in? And I said, I'm not in my adult chair, that's for sure. And it woke me up out of this dream state, and the craving for the potato chips went away instantaneously. It was instant. It was instant. I remember I had one like coming up toward my mouth and I said, I don't even want these. What am I doing?
Yes, that is so good, Michelle.
Yeah.
That is very much so another tool that we talk about, which is this concept of future pacing. And it's essentially doing some kind of mental planning before you get into certain situations. So it's like, okay, when is the brain going on kind of like this dream state, this autopilot mode? And how can we interrupt that when we start to notice like, hey, I'm there. Like, I'm not in my conscious higher self. I'm not acting from my adult chair. Like here, I've retreated back. And so, so powerful.
Yeah, if we're not aware, then we are going to be binging and overeating, and we don't even know it. We don't know until we're all done, and then we're beating up on ourselves. So I like this a lot. Why do you think that why would people not pursue healing their relationship with food? What do you find?
This is a lot of individuals, perhaps those of you listening, you might hear this and it's like ringing a bell. You're like, oh yes, this is me. I'm relating. I'm resonating with this. I feel this sense of loss of control over food sometimes. Some days I'm doing fine. Some days I'm not. Oh, I feel crazy. And then the next thought that happens is this fear, this overwhelm, this self-doubt, because it feels like this thing is wired into our DNA. It's like, can I really is freedom really possible? And I remember when I was at my lowest questioning, like, is life even worth it? And because my thought was, well, the best that it's going to get is just learning how to manage this. This is going to be the thorn in my side. I would Like if you were to tell me 8 years ago that I would be in this place where my husband will text me midday and say, hey, babe, remember to eat. Don't forget to eat lunch today. Like literally, like food is not the first thing or the last thing on my mind. Like it's just not there until I feel my body get hungry. Like I wouldn't have believed you. And so a lot of individuals fail to pursue healing their relationship with food for the doubt, the skepticism, the disbelief that it's even possible. And then the next reason is this overwhelming fear of weight gain and spiraling out of control in the process. And I get that because I was in that place too. And you might be feeling that, it's like, well, anytime I do try and ease off my diet or I try not to white knuckle it so hard, I kind of do spiral out of control. When I go on a trip and I want to just relax, like I end up just going way more overboard than I had intended. And the reality is that's like the initial phase of unscrewing that quote unquote bottle top and that carbonation is coming out. But guess what? If you leave that bottle top off, guess what happens? Eventually all of the pressure comes out and it settles. But women don't ever get past that point, and they're so afraid that they're just going to keep spiraling and keep binging and keep overeating. But the reality is that's a lie. That doesn't happen. But it's scary to go through that process. And that's why we give women a framework for how to navigate through that process without spiraling out of control or, women fear that they're just going to gain and gain and gain and never stop gaining weight. And that's not true at all.
Beautiful. So what is food freedom?
Yeah, food freedom is being in this place where you are able to effortlessly enjoy any food. No foods are off limits. And perhaps you might have some food intolerances or medical reasons you can't have certain foods. And of course, that's fine. But not having to live on a diet or count or weigh or track or measure anything, being able to eat intuitively. And that's just a fancy word for being able to listen to your hunger cues. And when you feel hungry, that's when you eat. And when you're eating and you feel full and satisfied, it's not a conscious, oh, I'm going to stop now. It's literally a subconscious, oh, I'm done. I've lost interest in food. I don't want anymore. That's freedom.
That would be freedom. No doubt about that. I love this.
Oh, so good.
This is so good. Thank you, Jessi. Is there anything else that you want to share? Did I miss anything? I feel like I've asked you so many good questions. I don't know if I've missed anything.
No, this has been so great, Michelle. And, I just want the man or the woman out there who feels in the depths of despair, who feels so hopeless, because the reality is these struggles with food seep into every single area of our life. They cause us to be short-tempered and agitated with our loved ones because we're struggling internally, and some of us are struggling alone. And I just want those who are in that place of just complete desperation and frustration to know that food freedom, having this easy, effortless, balanced relationship with food is 100% possible. And don't you ever for a moment believe that it's not. I don't care what doctor, what, person of authority or in a trusted position has told you, you just have to learn how to manage this. That is not true. There is a way to completely change what's happening on a brain-based level so that you can get back to this place of just normalcy. And so don't give up fighting. Relentlessness is important in this process, and it can happen so much faster than you even think.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jessi, how can people find you?
So I'm mostly on Instagram at Jessi, Jessi, Jean, Jeann, and also on Facebook, same link there on Facebook. And and then I do have my one landing page is www.conquerbingeeating.com/FFM. That stands for Food Freedom Masterclass. So that's where I'm at right now.
And tell us just a little bit about that masterclass.
Yeah, so the masterclass is an 8 to 12 week program. It's a a combination of an educationally rich course that kind of teaches you all of the science about, okay, why am I binging? Why do I eat emotionally? Why do I compulsively overeat? And then what are the tools that I need to begin retraining my brain? And so it's an educationally rich course coupled with kind of a coaching program. I partnered with a licensed professional counselor, and together we lead our women through this program of integrating the tools that we teach in the course. So yeah, that's what it is. It's a really, really powerful place. We've had hundreds of women successfully graduate the course, and it's been a really neat experience for me as well, just watching so many people. I always tell my clients, I feel like I give a little piece of my heart away every time I work with a new woman, and I'm a pretty sensitive person. So I find myself multiple times a week in tears over my client's success because I experience, that same feeling. It takes me back every single time of the desperate pit of kind of this mental hell that I was in, and then the moment that I felt my freedom. And so, yeah, that's what our course is. It's been a unique experience, a really powerful place, not just for the women who go through it, but for me as well.
I love it. Thank you so much. And I will have all of your links in the show notes. So if anyone would like more information, just head over to the show notes. But thank you so much, my dear. It has been a pleasure to have you on the Adult Chair podcast today. We really appreciate you joining us.
And thank you so much for having me.
I hope you all enjoyed the show today. I sure did. I really love Jessi. She's a great girl. And I just want to remind you, don't forget theadultchair.com/workshop. Come join us in Nashville, May 4th and 5th. And again, you can join us today if you want to join us in the Adult Chair membership, which is theadultchair.com/membership. Come check it out. We'd love to have you. Hope you all have a great week. I will see you seated right here, firmly in the adult chair. Love you all.